I'm Samantha Bates. I'm moderating the unhealthy or banning unhealthy Edspeak. I think there are two ways to go with that. Um, Go ahead and introduce yourself, Stacey, and then we'll get into the topic.
Hi, I'm Stacy Lovedahl, and I teach middle school science in North Carolina, sort of the western middle part of the state. And I'm really interested in this topic. It seems like the long, cold, dark days of January can sort of bring that out in us. So some ways to avoid it and to guide the conversations will be really good.
All right, so before we started broadcasting, Stacy and I were talking about how we both teach middle school. I teach language arts, but I've taught everything except math. So it is very easy to get into a very negative mindset and talk unhealthily about the job, about the position, about the students. So we're going to look at ways to address that. And then I believe it was in the session suggestions that someone mentioned banning certain vocabulary from students, like stuff and a lot and very. So if we have time, I hope we can talk about both of those things.
That'd be good.
Okay, so Stacey, how do you prevent negativity?
Well, my one of my backup things is always my Twitter PLN. I was online. I don't know what day it was, but it was this week. Well, it's the night that the middle school chat is on. So I guess that's Thursday night. And my main thing that I just put out there was I needed some inspiration because we came back to school after the new year. I had just gotten done grading tests that I had given the week before school was out, and I just counted up the F's, and I thought, oh my goodness, these children, they are just not doing what they're supposed to do, and why don't they care? And I listed all of the things that we had done in class and all the reasons why they really should have learned, and got into this whole conversation with my colleagues, and it's just it's really easy to list all the things that they aren't doing. So ways to, and Twitter is wonderful for just sort of turning that around and saying, okay, they're 12, they don't care about endoplasmic reticulum, and to kind of, just switch that mindset around a little bit to, focus on how to motivate them and think of them where they really are, which is not where their old and wise teacher necessarily is.
I totally agree with you there. I've had those down periods that can last a few days to an entire school year, and so my Twitter PLN really came through for me. It was like realizing that my situation probably wasn't as dire as I thought it was, and that there was hope, and that I could do things to make the kids more excited. I always laugh when we, as teachers, wonder why the kids aren't motivated. But if you think back to 6:45 that morning, we dragged in going, oh, not again.
Mm-hmm.
So it works both ways. I would hate to be an administrator trying to motivate teachers before Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm sure they come in saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we just have 5 snow days before Christmas?
Exactly. And when you think about it, at least, theoretically, we chose this job. We chose the career we're in and the subject, more or less, that we're teaching. I'm not saying that everybody chooses every aspect of their job, but there is a little bit of choice there. Whereas the kids, they didn't choose to have to take middle school science or to have to, whatever the curriculum that the state sort of mandates that they have to do. So, and that whole conversation about student voice and student choice is really relevant. How to actually incorporate that into class is hard for me to figure out every day in ways that really make a difference. I can give them a choice of picking whether or not we, do a group activity versus, maybe a reading activity to learn something. But, I feel like a lot of times I don't really have a whole lot of ability to give them choice over what they learn, because in North Carolina, at least, in science, it's very prescribed. You have to teach them about cells and genetics and, these aspects of chemistry, and it's boom, 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 and, so we have to go through that. So giving them really authentic choice, I find is pretty hard to do.
Oh, I totally agree with you. When I teach literature, I was never the student to read the assigned book, and so I find it really hard to assign books to my students that we all read as a class, because I know that a lot of them aren't interested in that. My first year I taught, I did Hatchet. I hated Hatchet when I was in 6th grade. Why I decided to teach Hatchet, I will never know. But at the end of it, it was a very good bonding experience. We all got around and talked about how much we hated that book. So,
oh, that's great.
So I totally see it. It's when I taught science, yeah, you have to get the stuff taught. There are different activities the kids can do as far as giving them choice. In reading, I find it really hard to differentiate and give them choice in what to read. The exception is accelerated reader, and we don't have to go into that because it's so controversial, apparently.
Yes. Yeah. Our school had accelerated reader up until, I want to say we've done away with it now for 2 years. And as a science teacher, and they still have to have a library book with them that they've chosen and that they've checked out and everything. But accelerated reader, from my point of view, meant that they were required to have something to read. So if all else failed and they were done with absolutely everything that I had assigned them in class, I could say, take out your library book and read it for the last 10 minutes or whatever. And I found that that's gotten a lot looser now that we don't have that as a school-wide thing. The language arts teachers in our school still, take them to the media center, on a schedule, and they're still required to have, their own self-selected reading. But for some reason, it was much more pervasive when we had the AR program. So I'm not sure about that.
Okay, so that can be a way to motivate students or demotivate students, depending on how it's used.
Yeah.
What are some other things that motivate and don't motivate students? I know that many students are not going to be very excited about coming back to school. So that will obviously have an effect on them. I think the kids will be more excited to come back in January than they were coming in December. And definitely more excited than they will be coming at the end of May.
Definitely. Yeah. Have you read a lot about the mindset issue? I'm not sure. Mindset.
I haven't. Could you explain it?
Well, I'm definitely not an expert, but a couple of things that I've sort of looked at around the edges and stuff is there's a book by Daniel Pink that sort of looks at, well, I think it's more, I haven't read it, but from what I've read about it, it's more around adult motivation, but basically what motivates people in general. And then there's also a TED Talk out there about mindset, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And the characteristics of a growth mindset, I have had the privilege of witnessing in one of my classes. For the first year ever, since I've ever been teaching, I have a group of kids that just, when I give them things to do, they clap. It's hysterical. Yeah. I mean, not all of them, but enough of them where that's just the atmosphere of the room. It's like, oh, yeah, cool. Now, of course, I think it's cool. But in 13 years, I've never had a class just have an atmosphere of, yeah, this is really cool stuff. And so you give them a problem, and they tackle it. They look at it as a challenge that they'd like to do, rather than something that they've shown up at 10 o'clock in second period and they have to do, and they'd like to just get it over with as quickly as possible. And they came that way, I didn't do that to them. So how to get that into my other three classes, if I could figure that out, I'd be so happy.
I want to see that. Could you take a video of that one day?
Hmm. I will. We did a thing one day. It was, this was, and so, just over the course of this year, on, just problem solving and observations and inferences and all that kind of stuff. And it was this thing where they had a cube, and each side of the cube was different, but there were patterns to why the sides and the numbers and the colors and the words, why they were the way they were, and they had figured out. And I did this with all three classes, all four classes. Three of the classes, they just kind of went through it, but mostly they talked with each other. It was like, oh yeah, this is fun, but they were focused, middle schoolers, really naturally, they were focused on just chatting with their friends and kind of sort of getting the thing done. My fourth class looked at it, and they were really into it, and they had at least 5 different ways of figuring it out. I had one girl who just jumped up and said, she just jumped up and she wanted to show on the board how she figured out what the numbers were and what the pattern was to the numbers. It was the difference between the four classes was amazing. And not
Yeah,
to say
I love the
that.
differences between classes too.
Hmm.
I can't imagine having one set of students all day. I think that would just make the whole motivation problem worse, actually.
Hmm.
You know, 6 hours with the same children is a little bit different than 6 hours with 100 different kids.
Hmm.
I like that you mentioned collaboration because it's very important with me, especially. I'm more motivated to do things if I have someone to work with.
Hmm.
And you're right, sometimes it doesn't. The conversation is not 100% always what we're working on, but the students I have are interested in getting things done with other people, sharing ideas before with their friends before they share them in front of everybody, especially before they share them in front of me, to avoid that failure, that feeling of being wrong, which
Hmm.
whole nother topic in itself. But I think you've hit something there that working with others can be motivational as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah. Definitely. And in science, it's sort of set up that way where we're constantly doing, labs that are either 2 or 4 people. They're either working with their table or they're working with their group of 4. So it's kind of, we can vary it a lot in science class. They can do independent work sometimes. And they can have labs and activities that they are working on together. And I find that it breaks up the class so that it's not like we're doing the same basic format every single day. So that helps out a lot. And they do, middle schoolers, well, people in general, I think, um, like to work with other people. I have kids every once in a while who are really reserved, and they might not participate outwardly in the group, but they're listening, and they appreciate having the group around them.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Hmm. How do you
And
find it being with your colleagues when you get into situations where maybe you're talking about those kids that are really difficult to motivate and aren't doing their work and aren't are having behaviors in class? That's one area I see a lot of times where the focus on the negative can come out a lot of times.
that's a good question. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of really awesome teachers who are problem solvers. And so those conversations happen. Oh, so and so has 15 assignments missing. It's never that large, but so and so's not turning in work. So and so's sleeping in class. That's never where the conversation ends. It always is, why is this happening? What can we do to fix this?
Hmm.
We instituted, I think 3 years ago, the power of I, where instead of students earning zeros or students earning Fs, they have to do it. They have to do their
Hmm.
work. You can't just take a zero. Um,
I love that
we
idea.
Oh, it's great. We held them in during lunch, and students realized, oh, I like hanging out with my friends during lunch. I should probably do my work.
Hmm. Did you do that as a school or as a team?
We did that as a middle school team.
I would love to do that. We have because getting them caught up is very difficult because every moment of their day is they have to be somewhere. I can't keep them out of somebody else's class just to torture them to make up my work. Because they'll get further and further behind. And so we don't have anything, any other time frame or time period when they can, unless they can stay after school, which a lot of them can't, or they've got other activities that they've got to go to. So having a plan like that is, that you've decided on as a team sounds great. Do you just have like one team member stays back in the classroom while takes, and monitors the kids who need to make up their work, or how does that work?
Yeah, we took shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing, I like how you said you can't keep them out of class. Actually, this year, I'm at a new school. This year, that's what we do. We'll go to whoever has the child in the next class, and ask a question like, can this be made up, or can I borrow so-and-so for a few minutes so that finishes work, or he didn't get the concept. And I teach language, so it's frequently they're not done writing. Can they come finish? But the math teacher has done it too. I don't think the science and social studies teachers have ever done it, but I work with some really awesome people. That's all I can say about that.
That's great. I'm going to steal this idea and talk about it because I think the people that I work with are great too, and willing to do things. But a lot of times it's just maybe thinking outside the box a little bit and saying well, let's change the format of the way we do things rather than trying to squeeze what we have into something that's sort of preset. Because we do that too. If I need to have a couple of kids that they're almost done but they haven't quite finished, I can keep them, and we're really flexible as a team in that way. But I think the idea of getting that time frame that is valuable to the student, they for the most part want to go to lunch with their friends, and we have 4 people, so if we took turns, having one of us stay back in the classroom, say, okay, we need these 6 kids, and when you're done, then you can, go back to sort of a normal schedule. I like that.
It's really amazing. Okay, we have a question from Emily Keller, or Kohler, probably Keller. She says, hi, I've been lurking for your conversation. I really needed this as I've been in one of those slumps. We use ICU at my school. What do you do if a kid gets really behind?
Yeah.
Okay, when kids get really behind, we always meet with the parent, even though we've been calling them for weeks on end. We meet with the parent, and we figure out a way to get as much work from the student as possible in a short time period. We have in-school suspension in my county. We've used that before. Obviously, pulling the kid out of all of his or her classes to get work done, get them further behind. But my thinking on that, if they owe so many assignments, they aren't ready for whatever they're missing in class right now anyway. So it's better to catch them up than to have them stay in class, not actually being prepared for what they're learning, and then getting further behind.
We have a couple of things we do for kids, and whether they're kind of behind or way behind, but the parent contact and all that sort of thing, it's really good. We'll send home a packet. This is okay. Here they are. Here's like the list or the the materials, a copy again, which drives us a little bit crazy, but we do it, and staple it to their progress report and say turn this in with your progress report. Use your progress report as a checklist so you can see what you've got to get done. My problem sometimes, though, is that a lot of the work that we do in class is formative and doesn't show up on the checklist, doesn't show up on the progress report because I don't give it a grade, a formal grade. So we have a lot of that in-between stuff that if they don't do it, then when they get to the test or the quiz or the lab report, then they're not going to be able to do well. So I have a little bit of problems kind of communicating that out to parents, that the reason your child got a 38 on the test is because he didn't do 5 things preceding it that were the learning part of the class. We also, with our athletes, our coaches are really supportive, and they'll have them stay out of practice and come to our classrooms after school. And if they miss a certain amount of practices, then of course they can't start, or they can't wrestle, or they can't whatever they can't do. And so the kids are motivated to get that done because they don't want the coach on their case. And we have it's set up in our school kind of team by team for the date and the time, but we have before and after school remediation times, or just tutoring or extra help or homework hangout, whatever you want to call it. It's a little bit hit and miss. Some teams will do it on a Tuesday. So you don't really know school-wide what the kids are doing and when it's available, but all the teams have a time frame after school where if kids can stay, they can make work up. So that helps out.
All right. So this has been a really great chat. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Emily Kaler. She'd let me know. It is after 10:10 Pacific time, so we are done. It's interesting that I got to moderate this one because I also moderate 10 Ed Chat on Thursday nights.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we're going to be talking about next week. It's motivation.
Excellent. I will definitely be there.
Oh, we'd love to have you. It's at 7 Central.
Sounds good.
8 Eastern.
Well, thank you, Samantha. I enjoyed it, and I'm going to get organized a little bit better here. My webcam is like shooting the side of my face, and I tried to move around, and anyways, so I'm going to get organized before this next session, so I don't have to have my face bobbing all around the screen. But it was really good to meet you and see you in person.
It was nice to meet you too. Thanks.
Thanks.